Welcome, everybody. My name's Tony Morris. I'm chair of the board of the Chester County Community Foundation, and glad to have everybody here. I see some familiar faces and some new faces. Show of hands for anybody that was at our TED Talk in the spring here at the Uptown. I hope you enjoyed it. I think you must have, or you wouldn't be back. Thanks for coming back. You are the future of philanthropy is tonight's presentation, and I've now seen it 3 times. And I get a little something new out of it every time. I think you'll find it stimulating.
So I'm Karen Simmons, and I'm president and CEO of the Chester County Community Foundation. And you are the future of philanthropy. Let's talk about this classic TED Talk. And we've brought together a response panel to get things rolling, but we expect the conversation to take place here, and every place in between. So what I'd like to do is have you briefly, a minute or less, talk about yourself for a minute, because I always hate it when people read those bios, right? So talk to us what you do in your day job and what you do by night. Ooh, okay. And Steve, you laugh so hard, so I'm going to start with you. Mr. Savage.
All right. My name is Steve Savage. I am a former intern at the Community Foundation. I interned for about 1.5 years, a decade ago.
A decade ago?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so old.
And my day job is working at Voya Financial in Westchester, where I serve on the Community Partners team. And the Community Partners team's role is to connect employees to different nonprofit organizations in the area to provide them with volunteer and giving opportunities. So not so different than what the Community Foundation does right now.
So you may get a hint of why he's on this panel. Who else? Shall we go up in, I think we'll go up in age. Mr. Holliday, I think you're next.
How old are you?
31.
Oh, should you have started? By how many days? By how many days?
Pretty close.
And how old are you?
34.
Oh!
You were right. I should go up in age.
I had to guess.
But,
And Jerry's 32, so you can go next year.
Exactly. Go down.
All right, 34-year-old Matthew Holliday.
So, my name's Matt Holliday, and during the day, I am the county prothonotary, and during the night, I serve on 13 different nonprofit boards, and I'm president of 4 of them. So I'm relatively busy and don't have a lot of free time, which is probably for the
That's a good thing.
So, that's me.
Thank you. Oh, and the 32-year-old Dr. Geraldina Martin.
I'm actually 80. I just look really good for my Hi, I'm Geraldina Martin. I teach at Westchester University. During the day, I teach a class called Stewardship and Civic Engagement in the fall, and I teach the capstone classes, and all of my classes are service learning classes, which is why I get to be here. Also, in the evenings, I have 5 kids, and so I'm running them to all the organizations around town. So if you see a car running by with flames coming out of it and kids hanging out the side, that's probably me.
Thank you very much for being here and taking that break from the kids. And the very young at heart, Richard May.
I'm Richard May, and I'm old enough that I'm more than twice the age of two of these panelists.
Me too, honey.
During the day, I am a financial advisor with a company called RKM, a Baldwin company, located right here in town. And at night and on weekends, I work with a number of nonprofits, some of which I have created over the number of years, but my specialty is on the philanthropreneurial end. So I work a lot building business relationships that assist nonprofit corporations.
Okay. So for our chat to get things rolling, we are very transparent. On page 2 of your handout are the questions. On page 3 of your handout are some of my favorite slides from that TED Talk, and page 4 is social media explained to me. So let's actually, the first question at hand, talk a little bit about your perspective over the many years or few years that you've been involved in the community. What kinds of changes have you seen in charities and philanthropy? And I feel like I'm standing behind you, so I'm going to wander. What have you seen? What changes have you seen, and what's the impact that you've seen? The good, the bad, and the ugly. Anybody? You're too polite. Go, Jer.
Wow, so the changes I've seen. I guess years ago, we were trying to just come up with fixes, and like she said, like the short term, trying to fix the problem of homelessness, fix the, and what I've seen kind of over the years is that you can't always fix all of the issues, and especially with the mental health issues that have been coming up, and I think that's where the shift has been, that we can't always solve all of the problems, but we have to put dents in them. And I always talk to the students about, when you have the starfish, have you heard the story about the starfish, and they're all out on the ocean, and there's one person trying to throw them back in because they've come out on the sand, and somebody else comes up and says, well, this isn't going to make a difference. You're only able to get to a couple. And they say it made a difference for that one as they throw that one out. And I think that's where I'm trying to explain to my students, you're one person, and if you reach 20 and they reach 20, and we kind of build upon it that way. So we might be only, reaching a few ourselves, but I think that getting everybody involved is going to, kind of be that wave of hopefully the future, is getting our students and younger folks involved at an early age.
Does anybody want to add to that concept before you bring up another topic?
I was just going to say, in the 20th century,
Yeah.
I think 90% of charitable giving was writing checks. And the 10% of the people that were involved in deciding where those checks would be distributed made a lot of the decisions relating to charity. Today, I think 10% write checks and 90% are actively involved in philanthropic decisions. And I think that's a massive difference.
Okay. So again, really bringing people to the cause one at a time and having people be involved in it?
Exactly.
Yeah. What do you, is that what you're seeing? Yes? No? Too soon to tell? Oh, this is going to be a tough crowd. All right. So more involvement. Other trends that you've been seeing?
The
Matt?
power of emotion is so overwhelmingly changing all aspects of our society, but particularly charity. And the way you tie that in is with a good story. And most of the executive directors and development directors in the room know that you got to get out a story of a client whose car broke down and she has 4 children and she won't make rent this month, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, as the draw. In the old days, you would go to a Charlie Swope or someone like that and say, we need $10,000 for this charity, and okay, sure, and he'd write the check. But now it's so much of the individual giving is tied to emotion, and that's why we see GoFundMes are just simply off the charts. If someone lost a family member that was just beloved, or they need that handicap accessible minivan to get Timmy to the Arc of Chester County or whatever the case may be, people are clicking away on it. And if they get the standard gala invitation, it's going in the recycling bin. So to some extent, obviously I'm speaking in generality, but the emotion, the tying it to a story and a face with the cause, is really changing philanthropy rather dramatically.
What are the challenges?
Well, part of it is you can't constantly out emotion each other. There are some
compassion fatigue.
Right.
That's
Right.
compassion fatigue is a term from 1982.
And it's back.
Yeah, it's an old term, compassion fatigue.
Right.
Covenant House. I don't know if you remember the Covenant House, those 4-page letters where it was all, oh my God, we need your, woman drops things, we need more storage. Yeah, so Covenant House really started to wear on people's last compassionate nerve. And then there was really much more of a shift toward lead with emotion, then state a logical case, but kind of leave people with some passion and wanting more, so more of a balance. And now you're seeing with social media, the house is burning, we've had an earthquake, give, GoFundMe. I think part of the challenge is for nonprofits and charities, how do we engage those GoFundMe click donors in a way that's authentic and has a commitment to our overarching mission, not just the house is on fire, we need your money. That's a huge challenge because you can't capture email addresses. What do you got, Ellen?
And the other part of that too is capacity to reach out to all those people in a consistent and sustainable way.
So how do you use all the different technologies plus print media, plus there's more to do?
It's easier to go to one person and ask them to write a $10,000 check than it is to continue to reach out to 10,000 people to keep them interested.
And I'm going to say the challenge is both. So that's even more of a challenge. You have to still talk to that person to get that $10,000 check at face-to-face. And you also have to have a presence on social media and probably in the good old direct mail once in a while to get those smaller checks that'll build up. So it's twice as many, at least more approaches. Yeah? What else do you see on this topic with the social media, really, the emotion part of giving? Have you experienced that in your nonprofit as well? What kinds of trends are you seeing when it comes to really having people to give? I see you, Wendy. You got a thought?
One of the things about social media for us is that social media is younger, skews younger. A lot of our donors are older, so we're having to, that further complicates things because you have to have e-messaging and then also print, personal meetings, phone calls.
Yeah.
So it's actually social media is wonderful, but it made our jobs even harder again.
And I said twice as much, but it's not. The reason I like the donut, did y'all check it out? We need this for our more seasoned board members, shall we say. And this actually came from a younger, newer board member. But I think it's a really funny way to describe all the different social media channels. Yeah, Facebook, I like donuts. Twitter, I'm eating a donut. LinkedIn, my schedules include donut eating for skills. So yeah, so you have to decide social media channels and really the approach to them on top of the print media and the face-to-face. Anybody want to say a little bit more than that? Yeah, what else? Meg.
The thing that I'm picking up as a common denominator with all of these different opportunities is the importance of relationships, right? And that's what's going to be reaching the people that says the house is on fire, but also the people that we've kept long term. So my question would be, how do we thank people who are the older and the younger? I think there are different generations that are doing the Facebook. The Facebook can't capture those people. So how do we build those relationships? And do we do it, in what way can we do it by thanking them?
That's the challenge. How do you actually secure the relationship? Any ideas?
Well, I have the students in the class read the 7 Faces of Philanthropy, and you have, the investor, the socialite, and so I think that if you're trying to figure out a way of swaying away from certain things and towards other things, you can't really. You have to do a little bit of all of those things. The galas are important. They make a lot of money. They, in asking somebody for a large check and getting students, like younger folks, to start participating in some of that is really important. So I think you have to thank them in similar ways. I mean, I know that if I have a conversation with you, I'm going to have that relationship. And so if we're having that relationship over the internet somehow, if I only want to go on GoFundMe, that means probably an email is fine if for my thank you. But if I'm the type to go to a gala, then I'm probably going to want more of that interaction. And that's one of the troubles I'm having with students these days, is that they want to do everything over the internet. They don't want to do a lot of things face to face. And so I have to kind of shove them out there and force them to do some of that. But as soon as they do, it becomes something. Somebody just today said, we just did this fundraiser and we're going to give it to the organization that we're working with in class. But it was a fundraiser that they're doing for something completely different. But because they had that relationship with the organization, that's the one that they chose to give it back to. So I think that's really important, is to make sure that and any of you can reach out, I'm hoping, to my students and beyond, let's get into the elementary schools and the high schools too, to try to make this a community of giving, and then it's a lot of reciprocity there. So
Yeah.
Want to add to that?
I would say 95% of the organizations that we have partnered with in our Community Partners program have come from personal relationships.
Really?
Yes. it's very seldom that we just cold call an organization and see what sort of volunteer opportunities there are. An employee will come to us and say, I have had a relationship with this organization for the past 5 years and they seem really well run. They have X and Y volunteer opportunities. Can you set us up? And then we'll take the reins and do it.
Okay. So volunteer experience gets them.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And that's the relationship.
And that gives people
Yeah.
a personal ownership as well with the
Yeah.
organization. If you've spent 8 hours building a house for Habitat for Humanity, then you're going to want to give to Habitat for Humanity.
Right, right.
And the fabric of society has changed dramatically, but human nature has not. It's always going to be about personal connections. And the reason is you have no way of knowing if you can trust. I mean, how many times have we read newspaper headlines of the Human Fund from George Costanza as an example that is not a real charity, or they waste the money, or they abuse the money, or the mission's not being lived up to. And when you have so many opportunities to do good, why wouldn't you make sure that every penny you're giving is going to a good cause? And the best way to do that is trust someone and have a relationship with them.
It's very interesting. I'm right now in the process of building a community in Coatesville, Pennsylvania, which is not my hometown, and building a community of people that are willing to work toward a nonprofit goal, which is the establishment of a performing arts center in Coatesville. And I'm going one by one, getting influencer in the city, hoping that they'll then in turn introduce me to their friends, associates, etc. And by a factor of 5 to 10 to 15 to 20, eventually build an organization, form a nonprofit, form also a for-profit that will own the facility, and have, within 5 years, have a full-fledged performing arts center in Coatesville.
So the hard, long-term work is still face-to-face, relationship by relationship, a tentacle, a web of relationships.
Perfect, a web of relationships.
Yeah.
Very good.
Interesting.
The building we're sitting in as a result of you and a few drinking companions.
That's
on
true.
your
It was
porch.
because of that vodka and grapefruit juice.
Right. Human relationships built this building.
Jameson, you want to add to it?
I just want to say on the other side, like the social media side, that we just had a strategic planning session. We read an article that talked about social media and about how younger generations won't give to organization if they don't have a social presence, or it's not easy to donate online. So say someone does go out and build houses for Habitat for Humanity and get to know the people there and have that relationship, and then it's like the season of giving and they want to donate back. If they don't have that online presence, then they'll hesitate to donate the money, even if they have the personal connection. So I think that part is still really important. Or even donors now, where a lot of donors do give in, checks through the mail, but a lot of them do give online too. So if we didn't have that easy database, then we would lose a lot of people, even if we built personal relationships.
And that goes back to Dr. Martin's point, which is you have to be able to be all things to all people, and you have to be able to do a little bit everywhere. But the theme that you can work throughout all that is personal relationships.
But I also hear that social media is sort of important as having a good brochure is. And if you don't have a good brochure, it looks kind of strange. Why should I volunteer or give you donations? And it's also like a good business card and a good website. They're just basic ground level things you have to have when it comes to communication vehicles, but they're not a replacement for developing relationships. Yeah.
And if you think about it, what do all those things have in common? They give you legitimacy. So
It's
depending
awareness
on
and legitimacy.
how you view
Yeah.
the world, you may view a Facebook page as, oh, well, then it's legit, or a
Right,
website
it's
makes it
legit.
legit.
Awareness
It's-
and legitimacy.
Is it-
What a-
So I have a question.
Yeah.
When I first started at CBC, one of the things that we talked about was like a folder of all of our fancy schmancy, well, as fancy as we could get,
Not
marketing
too fancy.
materials.
Yeah.
Not too fancy.
Not too fancy.
Marketing materials, and we got away from that because it was very time consuming and very expensive, and kind of our internal thought was everything that they're gonna get, they can get from our website or they can get from a phone call. So let them tell us what information they need as opposed to us giving them everything. So I'd be curious as to the panel's thoughts on
Little
like a
folder.
marketing package as a standard operating procedure.
The less, the better when it comes to print, but you have to have something. But lots of graphics and fewer words.
I think
That's where I
it's
go.
necessary but not sufficient to have
Yeah.
that basic package.
Yeah, I mean, what else do you see?
I know that when one of the hurricanes happened, I donated to AmeriCares, for example. And I think that they've sent me more than the amount that I've donated
Yeah.
to them in print costs
Oh, yeah.
since that time.
Yeah,
And it's
you
just
gonna
like,
donate again?
no, and I didn't.
Too much.
Because it was a one-time thing. It was because there was this huge hurricane, and then I felt compelled to do so.
And you're not a little old lady, sorry, who sends more money when you get more packages and lots of information in the mail? So
Right.
they didn't tag you right, did they?
No, and they've lost money on me. I don't know what they're doing.
You're
But
not an acquisition now. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that all goes back to the customization factor. So, you know, I know some donors who you better bring a packet because they want to sit there and check you out while you're talking to them. And I know other donors where I've literally tried to hand a certain person who has the same first name as her husband a document, and she's like, I don't want any paper. I don't want any paper. I'm paperless. You know, so you have to know the people and know the best way to them. And it's different for everyone. I also get frustrated if I get copious amounts of paper that I have to recycle from an organization when I just as well could have gone on the website and put in my credit card number, you know?
So people are more concerned about individual approaches, which again gives us more work to do because everybody wants to be treated like an individual and have you remember all their stuff, and that's a lot of tracking. I mean, I know on our Razor's Edge database, I have what kind of soda pop different people like. And I mean, because I can't remember if somebody comes to a meeting who likes Diet Coke and who wants Dr. Pepper. I mean, and who won't even drink soda anymore. That's just crazy, but you have to do it at a certain level. I don't know what kind you like, Jer.
Water.
But I have a wonderful person who will not drink water out of a bottle.
Yeah.
No, bottles? What are they doing to the... She hasn't wanted to drink water out of a bottle for decades. She just thought it was a big, huge marketing gimmick by the bottler companies to sell, you know, I want water. So everybody has bottled water except hers is in a glass.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah.
So customization,
Yeah.
which makes it even tougher.
And
Yeah.
while the paper mail is irritating for solicitations, a handwritten thank you note is the opposite because it stands out from everything else.
Right.
I recently went through something where I got probably 1,000 emails, 1,000 Facebook messages, 50 voicemails. I got 2 notes.
Oh God, I didn't write mine yet.
That's okay. So my point is,
I was going to.
they stand out.
Don't worry, I got
They
mine.
stand out.
I got yours.
They stand out. That's all I'm saying. They
I
stand
thought about it.
out. That's all right.
Do you think that's still true for younger people? Do they appreciate the thank you?
34. Yes, I do think
Yeah, those 2 people he's going to remember for the life. My little
as long
Facebook
as you
thing,
put something
gone.
into it, you know, as long as it's not emotionless, yes, I think it'll still cut through the noise.
Yeah,
I
what do you
completely
think?
agree.
Yeah.
It goes a long way.
Yeah.
It-
Even
it-
if you can't read the handwriting,
I was
it's
going to
still.
say, cursive isn't uniformly read these days. Remember that.
I think there's a level of authenticity that comes with a handwritten note, and I think that the millennial generation in general, they can spot out when you're inauthentic very easily, particularly online.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing because I remember the little handwritten postcard that was beautifully Xerox, so you couldn't tell it was going to be copied. And it looked handwritten until you went this and went, ooh. Yeah,
Yeah.
authenticity, you can spot
I
it.
know somebody who licks their thumb and goes like that. If no ink smears, it goes in the recycling.
There you go. And I think that works online as well because oftentimes organizations that have no business speaking like millennials or Gen Z will attempt to do so, and it just comes off so fake. And it just turns people off from the organization because it's like, why are you using this slang right now? You can tell it's just a ploy.
It
to
has
try
a direct opposite impact of the intended.
Yeah, I think for a vast majority of people, it just turns them off.
All right. All right. This is tough.
Let me just add a thought is something that we've done in the past is followed up the thank you note with a phone call 6 months later just to update everybody on what's happening with the project that they were supporting. And that personal phone call, if you can get through, is, I think, very appreciated.
Yeah, these days getting through on phones. Good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah, whole different way. What other trends have you noticed over time? Or newly emerging things that you're hopeful about? Richard?
Very quickly, as a financial advisor, the fact that a lot of our clients are no longer itemizing deductions mean they're not deducting their charities. So the ask is a little different than it used to be because the government's not picking up 35% of it. So I think it's I'm not sure that everybody even knows that yet, because this past year was the first year
Yeah,
where they
it's too
found
soon
out
to
they
tell.
were not itemizing. So that's going to be a challenge.
Maybe.
Maybe.
It's too soon to tell. Yeah. It's time. The CPAs will tell us soon. Do we have any in the room? Not this time. Yeah, what do you think, Kathy? Do you see anything coming?
Well, I think, maybe I learned from you too, but it's probably in that book as well. People give for reasons other than financial gain. And so for those people, which is probably the bulk of donors, that they're going to give whether or not they itemize or not. And then I'll tell you, as a CPA, that there's a lot of opportunity around that to plan, right?
Right.
So bunching deductions, doing a donor advised fund, or whatever have you. So there's opportunity still, and I think the reason is still there to give.
And I agree, and I think it might affect the amount of their gift, though, if they realize the government's not picking up 25% of it.
Other thoughts on that? Beth, I see you have that smile.
I do.
I thought so.
So I agree with Kathy. I think if the opportunity exists for nonprofits to sort of optimize the way that a donor can give. So before you would go to a website, somebody would say, okay, give cash and donate here online. But now the opportunity is that if you target your donors appropriately, you have, if you're 78 and older, you can give for your qualified charitable deduction or RD distribution. So I think you can give them a donor advised fund. So I think it becomes incumbent upon the nonprofit to recognize that life is changing in the way people are giving and to kind of open up new alternatives, the way people can give to them. For some people, it might be appreciated stock. So.
And those are bigger quantities. It's more technical. And it's a really good commercial to call Beth at the Community Foundation, because that's what we help nonprofits do all the time. Yeah, because it is very technical, and it's, I would think, not something a lot of folks focus on.
And I guess in my day-to-day, for those of you who work for the nonprofit, I have this year alone, I have probably answered more calls than ever about the 78.5. So donor advised funds technically can't accept them. So our donors are calling us and saying, well, who can I give it to? So, you know, it's...
So we look at the list of nonprofits that have endowments in the Community Foundation and say, well, there's some right here. Yeah, there's 80 of them right here.
But looking at that as an opportunity to give, where it will be tax beneficial too.
Yeah, so different, more technical, larger gifts. What else? Richard, you want to talk about philanthrocapitalism, philanthro-entrepreneurship?
Yeah, this started back in, for me, it started back in 2007, which is just about the date of this, date of this video. And the Westchester Public Library was doubling the size of its usable space, but trying to keep intact in the building. And our construction costs were $1 million overestimated. And this was 12 years ago, and it's a public agency, so $1 million is a little bit of shock to the system. Fortunately, the borough stepped up with $500,000, and I, as a treasurer at the time, I went out and raised $650,000 from private capital that then loaned the money to the library. This was also 2007. The banking system wasn't very healthy, and that money enabled the library to finish its construction program. The loan was interest only, so it wasn't too much of a strain on the library. And then when the banking system was back online, Fulton Bank refinanced the loan and we got our money back. Interestingly, 2/3 of the investors who'd put the money in for the library loan ended up leaving it into the investment vehicle that we created and made a $400,000 pledge toward the Uptown Performing Arts Center and became the first and sort of initial donor, not donor, investor in the project here.
All right.
So that same money was recycled back into a Performing Arts Center.
So what do investors expect for a return on their social investment? Because this is truly an investment in the community.
Yeah, it's the old expression, they can do well and do good at the same time.
Yeah.
They were willing to accept a lower rate of return than they otherwise would have received from a conventional investment. And they realized there was a little bit more risk involved, because loaning to the public library or investing in a theater involves some risk. But they went in with their eyes open, and we also tried to limit the particular commitment of their capital to 2.5% of their net worth. And that was a point that Katherine made in her video. If everybody took even a small portion of their net worth and dedicated to philanthropy or philanthropreneurial activity, that would go a huge way. And that's actually what we're trying to do again in Coatesville. So stay tuned.
Okay. Questions, ideas about this? Yeah, please.
I'm just wondering if any of the panelists have read the book Winners Take All?
Winners Take All. What you got? Winners Take All. No, what is it?
I mean, it's kind of an involved book, but I think a lot of it is that some philanthropy maintains the status quo. It makes people feel good, but it really doesn't change the underlying problems.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering what people think, if you haven't read the book, about that. What about the actual solving the problems as opposed to kind of putting a Band-Aid?
So, yeah, Band-Aids versus what the core issue is, huge one, which gets into the whole assessing impact. And then there's also a whole thing about charity versus philanthropy. It's a little weird layer on it, but yeah. So a lot of times people give because it makes them feel good. And they really don't know if they've gotten to the core problem, and they want to think they have, but they don't want to think they haven't. Yeah, so what do you think about that?
We actually talk in class about becoming a more active citizen. There's an active citizen continuum. You might just be a member of society or utilizing the resources. Maybe you go out and volunteer, so you're giving of your time. But where do you kind of move to when you're asking the why? Why does this organization do what they do? And so then you're moving along that continuum until you figure out, wait, I can actually become part of the solution here as long as I realize what the reasons are. And that's where the shift from just being a member of society to the active citizen kind of comes into play. And I think it's discovering what are the bottom line issues that are happening and not putting a Band-Aid on, as you said. And the students in the capstone, they have to come up with a project that doesn't just put a Band-Aid. They can't just do a 5K. They can't, throw a little bit of money at something. They have to come up with an innovation, something that hasn't been done, because obviously if it had been done, we would be successful at this point. But something that's a change and a positive social change in order to make some real difference. And then, of course, they have to make it sustainable, because if they're just going to do a one-time event, it's not going to be something that, we're still going to end up with all of the people that we're serving. So it has to have some of that assessment and evaluation part to it as well. So we can say, this is the needle that you're trying to move. You only might move it a little bit, but we have to move that needle towards the solution rather than just, helping a couple people along the way.
So not to put you on the spot, do you have any good examples of that, of projects that your students have done?
Oh, wow.
If it's too much
No.
on the spot, that's fine.
Put it on the spot, it's good.
Yeah, exactly. No, we've got some fantastic projects going on. A flood of them just came into my mind. So let me back up to a couple of years ago. We were working with the Innocence Project, and there isn't, legislation out there involved in how much money do you give them once, that somebody has become let free. We found out they are innocent, and now we might give them a little bit of startup money, and that's it. So there wasn't any legislation in Pennsylvania at the time. One of our students decided, I'm going to do something about that, and she worked along in some of her classes to write some legislation, which, of course, it's going to take a few years to get passed. But she had to figure out and talk with some, local people. She talked with Senator Dinniman. She talked with, some other folks around, and just to try to figure out, who do I need to get to make this change? And then she wrote that legislation, which is now kind of being pushed up and presented there. Kimmy and Cameron, I love this one. So they're working along with CHOP, They've done a lot of service towards this. They had to do some fundraising, a little bit of fundraising all along in order to create their project. And then Fox 29 heard about their project and picked up on some of it. What they're trying to do is get athletes, the athletic departments on campus, to choose one child, show that face, get to know the students or get to know the kids, and then have them come to a game. And you know, they have some serious issues going on and their families don't know always what to do with that, and we don't always know how to help them. So they'll talk with the families and find out how to help them. And they'll bring them to a game, and now they're going to have a gala coming up. But I mean, just so much where they're trying to figure out how can I not just, you know, get some fundraising going on, but help the family and talk to people individually back and forth. So yeah, I mean, there are 100 that I can also think of.
You will. Steve, how do you at Voya deal with volunteers who want to do good and make an impact? There's different parts of that continuum too. And so how do you get that across, or does it matter?
It's mostly volunteer opportunities that we're looking for, but we do tend to favor the organizations that are more about the root cause.
Yeah.
That goes a long way with us. If it's just a Band-Aid fix on something, then we might say, it's good that you're doing this, but we're looking for a little more impact.
How do you discern it? Can you give an example without giving away the nonprofit?
In the financial realm, our primary partnership is with Junior Achievement.
Just gave away the nonprofit. Thank you. Good.
Well,
so that was easy.
Is that what you said? Don't give it away? Oh, I'm sorry. Well,
no.
That's what we do. And the reason being is that because that organization is all about financial literacy. And if you think about it from the perspective of a financial company, to have a financially literate population in your community is very good, because that means there's more people who are willing to save for retirement and understand the right vehicles to save for retirement and are more likely to come to you for that reason, right? So it's one of those things where...
Win-win-win.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Now, Mr. Holliday, of the 13 boards you serve on, root causes, Band-Aids, how do you get boards to think about that?
Sure. So I'd like to think they all are dealing with the root causes, but in
Are they really?
in actuality, a few are not. They all have valued missions, and they are improving the community. One of the things that we're going to deal with societally, and we began about 10 years ago, and it's going to continue to get worse, is service groups are dying. I mean, the Lions Club, the Kiwanis Club, many Rotaries are dying off because a lot of young people are interested in doing a project. They're interested in partnering with Voya to show up at the Westchester Senior Center and work hard for a whole Saturday and leave it looking spick and span, and they're out. They're not necessarily interested in serving on the Westchester Area Senior Center Board of Directors, which I did for 6 years, and putting in monthly meetings and that long-term commitment. And so with Rotary, for example, I'm fortunate our club is the biggest in southeastern Pennsylvania, and we've maintained our level. But we can get hundreds of people to show up the day of the chili cook-off and volunteer for a day to help us raise $60,000 that we then give out to nonprofits in the community. If we could get 10 of those people to join and become members, think about the profound difference they would make 365 days a year instead of one day. But a lot of people are very wary of long-term commitments, and it's because life is crazier than it ever was. I look around at millennial parents, and you all did a great job raising your kids, but I don't think many of you let your kids take 8 different types of dance, participate in 7 different sports teams, and be on travel this and model UN that, and do so many things that your entire life has become working and being a chauffeur. So it's hard to get people to commit to, like the minivan that has flames coming out the back of it. It's hard to get people to commit to long-term commitments when they have these new imperatives that didn't necessarily exist on other generations when it came to youth development. So I think we're going to continue to see a difficulty in solving the root issues when we can't get people to stick around long enough to do it.
Yeah. Does that put any sort of lens on the book? I mean, what else was in there?
It does. You know, I was just curious, for example, like I think a lot of the issues are potentially economic insecurity, folks not being paid, you know, enough for working 2 or 3 jobs, and you're helping these folks, which is great. But is there a way to say, okay, we're going to then try to work on that underlying economic insecurity that kind of feeds into everything
Yeah,
else?
yeah. Poverty is not just solved by money, but there is, yeah. Julie, do you have some?
There's also a societal issue, and that is that the service clubs, just like community theater groups, which I'm very aware of, it was a place to go to meet people and to be connected. And we are all connected now in our hands and in our computers. Those are our connections. And that limits the willingness of people to they don't want to make phone calls. They don't want to talk. They want to just, I'm a great communicator with my fingers, you know, and it changes a huge interaction and how you get people to commit as a group and to want to become a part of a group. And so I don't know how society, you know, spins that around, because right now, unless somebody pulls the plug, people are disconnected. And so getting them to throw themselves in for 365 days is really hard.
Well, it's what Jerry talked about, is feeling how relationships can count and make a difference. Once you start to feel it, like Steve said, then it changes the prism a little bit.
Then we need to start in kindergarten. I mean, we need to start with the little ones, because since everybody is like this, I mean, that's the problem. By the time they get to you, a lot of like, I don't need that, you know, I'm good.
I saw 2 little girls back to back at the Y this tall the other day as I came out of the pool, and they had their fake little cell phones talking to each other back to back. Wow. I went, oh my God. And their mothers were talking over a cup of coffee. But Matt?
I was just going to say, a big part of human nature is legacy. You know, it's why we have children, it's why we invest in things, it's why we donate, it's why we have a reputation and cultivate it. And part of the issue that we're running into now is people think their online footprint is something to cultivate. If I had $1 for every staged photo I have witnessed, and then shortly thereafter they're all no longer smiling and screaming at each other and throwing things and racing away towards a car and everything else. But boy, oh boy, did they get that perfect photo right at Linvilla Orchard. So, you know, people really do. They invest a tremendous amount of time and energy manicuring that. And if we can get to the point where we remember that no one is, I mean, your Facebook account's going to get deleted within a month of you passing away. So if we can remember that there's different ways to be remembered and to leave a footprint and to leave your fingerprints all over people's hearts and minds, and one of the best ways to do it is philanthropy.
So Katherine Fulton had that blank
Blank
image
picture,
up there,
portrait.
and what I thought of was, well, I'm living, the future of what, my dad wanted for me. My mom, raised me a certain way, and, so if they gave that to me, I need to do that for my kids too. And so when you said, they should start them in kindergarten, I started them even smaller, and they take the can tabs off the soda cans. We recycle as much as we can, but we also, we're saving, our old towels for the SPCA. Like every day they are coming up with their own ways of who can I don't need this anymore. I want to pay, give it forward. When they do their financial, they get maybe $10 for their birthday. We have to split it 4 ways. They have to donate, some of it, so they'll donate a quarter of it. They have to save some for taxes. So,
ooh, that's the other one. I was thinking
good one, yeah.
You might want to get her in your financial literacy.
So the taxes at home go towards the good of the order. So we might go out to dinner, we might go out to, and then you have to, obviously they want some of their own spending money, and then they have to save some, so they have to put some away in the bank too. So if you don't start, now they just think about it. They come back to the house, they got some birthday money, they're going to put that in the different, buckets that they have. They have some jars too. And then they get to decide at the end of the year, where do we want to donate this to? And they have to give some to the church. That's we go to St. Agnes, so they're donating some to the church, and then they're donating the rest to another organization. I think just getting that mindset, they now just think about it. They now say, we got 5 of these. What are we going to do with it? And we're going to try to donate them somewhere. So I think, yes, you have to start out really young. And then I get them in college, and maybe they haven't had that growing up. But once they get to me, I'm hoping, did I do anything to share with you? Like,
For those who don't understand, I was her student at one point. Yeah.
So Z, it can be successful when we're teaching, but you do have to share with them to be active citizens, and that's, yeah.
From the start.
I was going to add one other thought. I had lunch with a retired physician the other day, and he has done a lot of studying about these blue zones. I don't know how many of you have heard about blue zones. Are places on Earth where people live to 100 years old.
Yeah.
And there are places like Okinawa, and
Right.
there's Sardinia, I think, and there's someplace in Russia, and someplace else in Japan. But they were trying to figure out, is it diet? Is it exercise? Is it diet and exercise? Is it just heredity? And the conclusion that they really reached was, no, it's community.
Yeah.
And every one of these places has extremely strong sense of community. And I think that's the point that Julie was making, is we've got to reestablish community. And I think the nonprofit world really can go a long way toward doing it. So I think that's a challenge, but I think we can help do that.
How?
I think we're creating a community every time that we're raising money for our church, for the library, for a theater group. People, I think, will come together over food. They'll come together over music. They'll come together over faith, and they'll come together with projects together, like a sports team or a political campaign or a theater production. And I think those sort of things, which generally tend to be in the nonprofit or in the not-for-profit world, are where community might exist in the future.
Yeah. All right.
I think there's also room for community online as a younger person.
Yeah.
I think that there are legitimate communities on the website Twitch, for example. If no one, that's one that you didn't even put on
not
here,
on there.
and it's probably one of the most influential ones.
Yeah, that's an old diagram. It's at least 3 months old.
At least.
Know what has changed since then.
Yeah, but I think that there's groups on Facebook where people feel like they're a part of something. I think on Twitch it's the same way. I think connecting with people from different areas of the country or world is a good way of diversifying your worldview in some of these groups. And maybe it's people who like the same thing, but maybe they share some other opinions about other things to get out of their echo chambers. But yeah, I think that the online also is a valid form of community.
So in my heart,
it's critically important because Jerry, when I was listening to you, I was thinking, wow, how impressive. But there's so many people that aren't doing that. I think you're a huge minority, and I applaud it. And the only way you're going to be able to deal with what you're talking about is mass communication. And Katherine Fulton was talking about how we're the ones that can create the problems, and we're doing woeful little bit to create the solutions. And I think it's going to have to be on a social media type platform to do that.
So in my heart, I'm an 80-year-old man, so I would love to disagree with Steve, but frankly, he's absolutely right. I have 30 staff members, and they're almost all mothers, and I will hear them talking to each other, and they'll say, "Did you see what Cindy posted on the Downingtown Moms group last night? I can't believe she even said that." Well, Becky told her, and Veronica told her, and they're absolutely have deep personal connections to people they have never met before. This last year, I have had so many people come up to me on the sidewalk and be like, "I love everything you do, and you're great," and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, "Oh, that's wonderful." And you are, like, I have no idea who they are, but they follow social media and they see what I'm doing, and they're touched by it for some reason.
Matt, if all those people could hear from someone about what you know about, which is the fire companies,
right?
They're volunteers. Everybody thinks you call 911 and some paid fireman comes to you in Westchester. If the volunteers aren't there, we're toast.
Yep.
But I'll bet you 10% of the population knows that.
Well, ignorance, Tony, is really the underlying thing that we're all fighting. It doesn't matter if it's homelessness or poverty or education or.
How do you get all those gals to talk about that stuff instead of what somebody's wearing?
Well, yeah, regardless of that, I will say that you're right in that we have to do a better job educating. Richard and I were on the library board for many years, he far more than I. And one of the things we faced was people assumed that their tax dollars paid for the Westchester Public Library. Mm-hmm. They had no idea that government funding accounted for, what, a third. Of what we actually needed to operate that library to the standards they were looking for. And to your point, the firefighters and the ambulance drivers are volunteer. And if we knew what our taxes would cost us if those people decided, you know what, I'm sick and tired of having to run out of dinner to go put somebody's cooking fire out in their kitchen because they couldn't pay attention, they were too busy on their phone, our taxes would go through the roof. So educating people, using our bully pulpits, and building that sense of community and getting people to respect and look at the value that everyone is bringing to Westchester is really what's going to turn us into a blue zone.
I think that the social media aspect is so critical, and there is a community, but you need the boots on the ground.
Right.
And it's that the thing that when you ask the question about how do you turn that around, it's in the messaging. Mm-hmm. And where do the XYZ mom group, where do they have, where is that platform? And that's where organizations that talk about this is what the reality is that gets through on the social media, because at where I work, we had an opportunity for major grant funding, and it didn't require getting money from people, it required voting. Well, that was a whole capacity issue. Mm-hmm. And we did get the grant that we were hoping for. Mm-hmm. It took 6 weeks, and we were pretty exhausted, even though we knew what we were doing, and we were going to be we could see that we were going to be one of the top vote getters anyway. But how do you maximize that? We got everybody rallying around it, and don't lose that momentum, because now we have to say, and here's where the funding comes from, or here's where the opportunity is, or here's where your community outreach is. Because I think the social media on its own can be vacuous. It's where you translate that into real life, and maybe not everybody in that network is going to be here in Chester County even, mm-hmm. But sometimes they might be, and then that familiarity is what builds it, because otherwise you can't really have one without the other.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like social media is vacuous. We're going to quote Ellen on that. It can be vacuous.
And we could have a whole argument about chicken or egg here, and I apologize for the gender-specific analogy we keep using or example, but with the mom groups, if you think about it, and I'm assuming because I did not bear children in the 1950s, but I'm assuming that a lot of the advice you got was from other mothers in your life. It was neighbors, it was coworkers, it was relatives, and people talked amongst themselves because they had that human connection all the time. And so really, moms today are just seeking that same level of communal understanding and best practice and everything else. They're just getting it online because they don't know the person who lives 3 doors down from them, because we as a society don't prioritize knowing the people who live 3 doors down from us anymore. So I agree with you. I think you need both, but you need one to lead into the other. You need the electronic, correct.
Mm-hmm. One isn't more important than the other, but they work together, because that mom group may be the exact group where somebody involved says something about a socially significant issue related to children or whatever, and the rest of them say, holy cow, I had no idea. Right. And then you get activists from that. But it's knowing how to make that network meaningful, because some folks I know involved in philanthropy or development over the years talked about the people of the 1950s. Maybe I'm wrong, and correct me if I am, but that there would be a handful of people who would be sort of the leaders of the peer group, whatever that was. And if Susie Q did whatever, then all of her friends did the same thing. Is that same phenomenon part of social media today, or are people so individually
There are people who get paid a lot of money. They're called influencers.
Yeah.
I don't think you should sell community involvement too short in terms of the future. I think of communities like Brooklyn. My daughter lives in Brooklyn, and she's lived there for 12 years. And there's a very youthful culture there. And they have a whole bunch of subsidies in there that do all kinds of good social programs. And I think that, that they develop themselves. So and also Philadelphia was one of 2 places that National Geographic picked in the United States that were worth visiting, and they said it's because of the neighborhoods and the neighborhood sense. So I don't know so I was using the youth analogy because, like I said, Brooklyn is a very, very youthful. I think Philadelphia, certain sections of Philly, is very youth-oriented as well. There's a lot of young subcultures that are being developed in there, and I think that there is a key there. That's a question to you all, is what is that key, and how do you develop it?
Well, I think I heard diversity of all kinds, not just age by any means.
But we're talking about building up from in other words, as we get older, we need new blood and new money, and I think that that's something that, that I think a youth, I'm not saying a youth culture, I grew up in the 60s, and there was a youth culture, it was great, I think it's important.
John.
That it's more important that we listen to that. Listening is a very important talent. So how do you develop that?
Sarah, is that your hand I see in the corner? Okay, what you got?
I agree with John on that one. I think a lot of times people don't really understand how, while in some sense we are a bit disconnected in their phones, we're also very connected in the way that we are very community-oriented and civic-minded because of things like social media. Everything that has gone wrong in the world has been thrown in our faces constantly because we've grown up with that. So we are very aware of social issues, and I think that we're actually more connected than people give us credit for. And right now, we don't have the disposable income to give out to these organizations, but we are definitely giving our time and our talent to organizations by posting about them on our Facebook or by actually going out and volunteering with organizations, and even people like me and Jameson who are now working in nonprofits. And I think we're a generation that is really willing to give up certain things so that we can give back to the community. And I just want to say, don't lose faith, because I think we're going to be okay.
Good one.
Yeah. I know you are.
As much as I want to yell, get off my lawn, you all are definitely, the next generation is more civically minded in everyday life than probably any generation before them. It's just going to be a matter of, are they going to break the wheel, to borrow from a popular HBO show, and reinvent it in their own way, or can we somehow find a way to marry them to the system and have them work within it to improve it? And that's what remains to be seen, I think.
Got something, Jerry?
Yeah, I think you can marry those two together. And, I know to your point of, we have to get that out there in social media to reach more people. But honestly, if you, reach, like I reach 80 students every fall and I reach another 80 every spring. And so if I'm able to share that with them, and they all have to bring little teams on to help their projects go, I think it's kind of making those waves so that you can, reach more people. But if I say, hey, Maggie, can you text so-and-so, or can you put this on the Google chat or whatever, it reaches a lot of people really fast, and they know that if it's coming from her, they're her friends, and they're going to follow her along and do what she's doing too. So we get a lot of being able to volunteer with the different organizations, and doing a gala and doing some other things by making sure that we are using the social media in appropriate ways, but also making the personal connections.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think there's been a slight shift in, and this is actually potentially a bad thing, but it's interesting. Philanthropy and the decision to donate has a little more to do with the champion of the cause rather than the cause itself. So influencers, for example, online, celebrity personas saying, you like me, I like this organization, why don't you donate to it? Katherine and Fulton talked about that, and with the matching gift example, I think it's a little less about matching money, but matching fun little activities. Think about the Ice Bucket Challenge. That was probably the most successful.
There's a TED Talk on that.
And that's probably the most successful campaign in the past decade, right? Everyone was
Viral.
talking about it, and they've raised something like $115 million, which was double their annual budget in a couple of weeks. And they did that by starting out very small with the ripple effects and using social media and asking key influencers to do this silly little thing where you dump ice on your head and then talk about ALS and donate to it. And even if the message got lost for 80% of the people who did it, still 20% of the people who did it was millions of people, right? And they all donated, and it still worked. So it's very interesting how you can use the power of social media to make a huge impact with a ton of people.
Sometimes you don't even know that it's going to happen that way.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I've had the occasion to get to know a 30-year-old celebrity in the last 6 months, and it's a fellow named Derek Morgan. I don't know if any of you know him, but he was a Coatesville High School graduate back in the 12, 14 years ago, was a superstar at Coatesville, was recruited and played at Georgia Tech. Then he was drafted, number 1 draft choice by the Tennessee Titans, had a 9-year career in the NFL. He was paid $72 million during that 9-year stretch. But more than that, he made lots and lots of friends in the NFL. He retired this past July, and he has announced that he is raising impact investment funds of $200 million. He has dedicated part of this to 4 different cities in the U.S. At Austin, Texas, Nashville, Tennessee, where he played ball, Atlanta, Georgia, and Coatesville, Pennsylvania. So he's committed and signed a letter of intent to invest $50 million in downtown Coatesville. In Austin, Atlanta, and Nashville, $50 million is going to make a difference. In Coatesville, it's going to be a game changer, which is why we're so optimistic about doing some work in Coatesville. So
Stay tuned.
yes,
Stay tuned and be a part. Yeah. Should we wind up with that blank picture of what philanthropy looks like? I'd love you to throw out some words about, think of the blank portrait and think 25, 50, 100 years from now. What do you want people to be saying about philanthropy in Chester County and what difference we've made? Anybody? Words, phrases, terms?
Inclusive.
Inclusive? All right, so philanthropy and community has become inclusive. What else?
Ubiquitous.
Ubiquitous. Wait, I'm still trying to remember what ubiquitous means. It flows through everything and we don't even know it, right?
Everybody's doing it, and it's just
Ubiquitous.
it's the norm of the day. Yeah.
Okay.
Meaningful impact.
Making full impact?
Meaningful.
Meaningful impact. Thank you. What else?
A little bit synonymous but contagious.
Anonymous but contagious?
I'm saying synonymous.
Oh, synonymous but contagious. Ubiquitous, contagious. I got you. What else? We had more. Go ahead.
Unnecessary? Because we solved it.
So then what am I going to do with my retirement?
We still need arts and culture, okay? You can solve basic needs like, food, clothing, shelter. How about environment, arts, culture? There you go. Solve core problems. And
A safe and secure place to live. Safe and secure.
Safe and secure, okay? What else?
Sustainable.
Sustainable. In what way sustainable?
Through time, just continuing to make sure everything is remaining okay, not just that we solve a few problems and then they come back.
Okay.
She means investing with the Chester County Community
Right.
Foundation.
I didn't ask that.
Exactly.
Sustainable forever.
Right.
For good forever?
Right.
There you go.
Okay. What else? What else?
Innovative.
Innovative. All right. That whole thing about wheels and, yep. Okay. What else?
Perpetual.
Perpetual. All right, so that's different than sustainable, right?
I think so.
How?
I think perpetual means forever, not just sustainable. It means forever.
Okay. What else?
Illuminating humanity.
Illuminating humanity. Yeah, I like that one.
Accessible.
Accessible. Okay.
Educational.
Educational. I like it.
Maybe like not looked down upon. I think sometimes people view nonprofits negatively or as like lesser than, like if you understand what I'm saying.
I do.
But I don't know a single word for
All right, what is the single word?
Respected.
Respected. Respected. Yeah. Judged well, valued. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. The everybody profits from nonprofits thing, I like to
Or
say.
use like more confidence.
Distinguishable. Yeah, okay.
Become part of the business sector and the governmental sector and nonprofit sector, they're all kind of blend as one.
Almost ubiquitous. Okay. I think we've done it. Have we had a good panel? Thank you for being the future of philanthropy. Please eat, drink, and be merry. We have all kinds of goodies in the back and all kinds of goodies in the front and in the middle, so please enjoy yourselves.